My name's Annette Blair and I'm a glass artist from Canberra, Australia. I've been blowing glass for about 25 years. So I'm already at day 3 of my residency, and so far we've been exploring surface textures and trying to get a little bit more depth in the surface using coloured powders, building up layers of powders, which is something that I haven't really done a lot of before. So it's been good so far to test that out. The first couple of days we were just focusing on that texture and how it was going to work. And now that we've got a little bit of an idea of how it's going, I am working on manipulating the forms and making some more interesting forms to put that texture on. So I studied at the Canberra School of Art, graduating about 2004, and then I moved to Adelaide in Australia, where I did a 2-year hot glass traineeship at JamFactory in Adelaide. After that, I moved back to Canberra, and the Canberra Glassworks had just opened, so I had this amazing new facility to work in, and I've been there ever since. Yep, so throughout my practice I've always sort of been interested in our connection to people and place, and particularly at the moment I'm interested in how that can sometimes be found within objects that we have like a nostalgic connection to. So objects of function, household objects that may often be overlooked but have a really simple beauty, and how you can feel nostalgic towards those things. I like with the building up the texture and the paint and the powders, I'm trying to sort of age them a little bit and add some elements of decay to sort of suggest the passing of time a little bit. This residency is sort of about gathering information about adding that extra texture, and then I'll try and incorporate that with the techniques that I already use a lot at home, and sort of try to bring that all together in new ways.
I'm here with Annette Blair, who came all the way to us from Canberra, Australia, last week. She works with a glass practice that has spanned 25 years, and she's known for her refined technical skill and thoughtfully crafted glass objects that explore materiality, memory, and passing time. She completed an honors degree at the Australian National University School of Art, and then completed the Hot Glass Associate Program at the JamFactory, 2 of the glass blowing centers of Australia. After completing her work at JamFactory, she moved to Canberra, where her artistic practice is centered today. She has been recognized through numerous awards and prizes, including being a finalist in the Ranama Glass Prize, a Fuse Glass Prize, a Tom Malone Prize, a National Still Life Prize, and a Wallara Small Sculpture Prize. Most recently, in 2022, Annette won the Vicky Tor International Year of Glass Prize, which was a big push that the UN had to recognize glass around the world. I'm thrilled to have her here. She's going to talk a little bit about what she's been working on this week and what she does when she's not here at the museum. But Annette, you're a trooper for working in this hot heat. And without further ado, pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Katie. I'll go ahead and start this slideshow. So, like Katie said, the Pilchuck Glass School, which is just north of Seattle, has brought me here, but it's been an amazing honour for Katie and the team here at the MOG to have invited me to come and spend a week here working on my own practice beforehand, and the timing really worked out really well. So I'm super happy to be here working with the team. As well as thanking MOG, I'd just like to acknowledge some support I got from back home from Arts ACT and Regional Arts New South Wales who are supporting some freight costs for this project. And Olympic Colour Rods, more locally, are a colour supplier to glass artists in this area, and they've supported this project as well, so thank you. This is a picture from Pilchuck, which is somewhere that I've been. I tried to work it out the other night, but it's about 16 times now, so I've made the trip over here, and it's a very special place to me. The class that I'm teaching next week is co-taught with my friend Jen Ellick in those photos there. She's a local to this area and is quite often here working at the MOG. We're teaching a class on designing tableware and cooking together as a group, which is a really fun kind of community-spirited class. We'll go foraging, blow glass, and cook and eat together. And in a couple of weeks' time, there should be a final feast that looks something like this. This was from the last time we taught the class 10 years ago. So back home, I'm super lucky to live out in the countryside on the lands of the Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Ngarigo people. It looks a little colder than this at the moment. We're in the middle of winter over there. But it's a beautiful place to live, and I'm grateful for my family that I've left there holding down the fort while I come and pursue this opportunity. Oops, back one. I studied at the Canberra School of Art in the early 2000s. It is one of the best glass schools in the world, has a great reputation, and with a variety of instructors and graduate students and visiting artists, we sort of get access to a vast array of skills and talents and specialties. So these are some of the teaching staff that were around when I went through. And it gives you a really good solid foundation in working with lots of aspects of working with glass. I was immediately drawn to blown glass though, and I spent most of my university degree trying to develop technical skills in glass blowing while also incorporating some artistic practice as well, bringing in my interest in painting and drawing. So I've made these pieces that sort of sit on the wall, and the portrait image of my grandfather is across the whole spread of them. At this time I was fairly new to glass, 3 years into my degree, and was using oil paints on a sandblasted surface to get the imagery. After graduating, after 4 years at university, I still wanted more skill, and there wasn't a lot in Canberra at the time. So I moved to Adelaide, where the JamFactory traineeship is. Katie mentioned you train really full on for 2 years, doing a variety of projects such as solid fish for the local fishmonger, as well as designing and making your own product ranges. This was one that I developed at the time. You work all day, every day, and it's just purely to build up different skills in working with hot glass. They have visiting artists come as well, so I was really lucky during my time there to have Lino Tagliapietra, whose work is up here behind, underneath the screen. He came with his team, Dave Walters, and others who are amazing and all specialists in their field. So having exposure to generous mentors like that when you're learning to blow glass is amazing. At the time, while I was focused on developing skills, I also continued to sort of push my artistic practice. In 2007 was around the time I came out to Pilchuck as a student and took local legend Dick Weiss's class, and Susan Stinsmule and Armand, who it was a good introduction to working with enamel paints, which is a fired glass paint on the surface of the glass, so it sort of adheres more permanently than the oil paints I was using at the time. So I was exploring ways of combining those with my work. as well as using things like enamel pencils just to get different looks. I was really just playing around with lots of ways of using these paints. So these are sort of more drawn onto the surface, like Conti crayons. At this time I was also interested in pushing the actual vessels a little bit more, moving away from historical Venetian kind of style handled vessels, giving them a little bit more meaning for what I was trying to convey with the painting, which is exploring very personal narratives. So thinking about objects that meant something to me, and doing a lot of portraiture at the time, I wanted to use objects that meant more about the person I was trying to capture as well. So the stacked teacups, and playing around with found glass as well. So these were preserving jars that actually did belong to my grandparents. So I used those to explore their likenesses with the portraiture. So just after the year after I finished at the JamFactory, the Canberra Glassworks opened, which is an amazing facility similar to this one that we're in right now. It's been built into a historical landmark in Canberra, which is the old power station, and a group of artists fought for a very long time for it to become home to the Canberra Glassworks, and in 2007 it did so. That's where I work today. A lot of my career has been assisting other artists, which has been hugely beneficial to developing skills to pursue anything that I want to do in my own work. So there's me assisting Tom Rowney for Klaus Moyer, and up at Pilchuck Glass working with Australian artist Tom Moore. All very different sets of skills, which really has influenced the way I work with glass in a lot of ways. So there's some more assisting as well, working with Lino when he came for his last working trip in 2012 to Canberra, and Claire Belfrage, who many people might know here and is in the collection of the Museum of Glass. So today I spend most of my time gaffing for other artists, which Katie talked a little bit about. The team here spends a lot of time doing. That's basically when artists come in and need you to fabricate something that's outside of their skill set. So I work for a lot of glass artists, sort of making blanks for them, which then they do a lot of labour and work to afterwards. So I'll just show you a few examples of that. This is Holly Grace. So I'll make the blanks, and then she does a lot of gilding and cold working and imagery on the outside of these forms. Mel Douglas, I also make a lot of work for, and the same goes for Mel. I make the blanks with a lot of the lines in the colour, and then she very heavily cold works and engraves the beautiful details onto the surface. I love about my job that it's so varied, and it's working on different things all the time, and it's always a chance to add more skills to my repertoire. Local artist Jenny Kamari Martinello. She does the layouts of all the pattern work, and I make these forms inspired by indigenous baskets. Jeffrey Sarmiento, who is the current head of the ANU Glass Workshop, he'll fuse powdered glasses together in a print technique, and sort of we'll pick up these wafers of imagery on the outside of vessels, and then I've made these rice bags for him. I also work for some local sculptors in Australia, so they work in a variety of media and just get me to create glass elements when they need them. One of my really nice full circle moments was working for Patricia Piccinini, who's one of Australia's sort of biggest artist exports, I guess. When I was in Venice for the one and only time that I went to Venice in 2003, she was the artist represented by Australia at the Venice Biennale. And about 16 years later, I was asked if I could make some glass with her, and of course jumped at the chance. And she did this major exhibition in some abandoned ballrooms above Flinders Street Station in Melbourne, where she took over all these large rooms with a variety of really unique sculptures, and I was so happy to be part of it. As well as gaffing, I occasionally make product, less so these days, but I trained as a glassblower through production, so it's sort of hard to shake a little bit. But I do like making tableware and homewares. These are just a few examples, and some lighting. So after I moved back to Canberra, when the Glassworks opened, I continued to explore the idea of portraiture and enamel painting by making these sort of domestic objects and painting them. This piece is painted on the inside and outside of teacups and saucers, exploring the use of transparency and seeing through imagery to sort of build a little bit more of that narrative. I really liked these pieces. The objects inside were just matte black, and as you walked around the dome, that white imagery sort of disappeared and then came into focus and worked really beautifully. And exploring different domestic forms, a lot from the sort of the kitchen and outside in the shed, both sort of areas where I spent a lot of my childhood, especially around my grandparents' house, and more explorations into that layering of imagery, transparency of glass. This is when I started to explore some more sculptural elements in my work. Working for people like Tom Moore really sort of had me thinking outside the box a little bit more, away from the vessel. These were early experiments into that. And combining found objects like the cord of this old phone as well. I was working a lot with high temperature enamels at this time as well, and exploring how I could bring more into these domestic objects by just exploring textures of the home with enamel paints and different cold working processes. So these nested bowls that I made, each layer sort of references a different texture that you might find or a view, like the sunset, and there's the drapes and balls of yarn. So just combining those elements to sort of build a little bit of a story. Same one with this one, exploring sort of native grasses and build up of paint as well as marble. This was for a show in Canberra called Somewhere Familiar. So it was trying to spark some nostalgic connections for the audience as well, while at the same time drawing from my own experience. And these balls of yarn were sort of exploring the same things. I really like the still life collection of objects, and you'll see that I've worked with that pretty consistently for a while now. This was a 7-stack bowl, and I've only just recently realised at the time it was sort of referencing the balancing act of motherhood as well, which I was quite new to at that time. The second bowl from the bottom is referencing notepaper with kids' sort of crayon scribbles all over it that I copied from what the kids were doing at the time. In 2019, 2020 summer in Australia, we had really awful bushfires near where I live, and it was sort of a really hard time for me as an artist and a mum. So we live in the countryside and we had to evacuate a few times, and quite often we'd have black eucalyptus leaves falling down around the house. And a 6-month-old at the time who couldn't get rid of his cough and spending all this time inside. So it was a really difficult time, and I was feeling pretty uninspired to make work with so much bigger things going on. So this piece was when I was starting to come out of that a little bit, about hope and, the fresh new growth sprouting from all of the burnt leaves. So these were hand carved and out of colour, black colour. So after I got out of that bit of a funk, I had a solo show at the Canberra Glassworks, which is, as you know, a historical powerhouse. So I wanted to use the elements of the gallery space that still had that history, and I built this shelving in the middle of the room, which sort of referenced the old shelves in my grandfather's shed, and I just made all these sepia-toned domestic objects and just tried to pack the shelves pretty tight with them. This whole show was sort of little still life groups. That's a detail of some of the objects that were in the middle of the room. It was a good exploration in hot sculpting and cold working, and there's lots of different processes throughout this work. As well as continuing to explore what I can do with enamels. So these buckets here and the leaves are made with coloured glass, but also enameled and rusted on the outside. Just really referencing that sort of wear and tear and the history of the function of the objects. This is just a little quote that I found that I really like, that sort of sums up what I love about still lives. And I'm always looking at contemporary and historical still life paintings as well for inspiration. This piece in particular, the lemons, it's hard to see up there, but the lemons are painted with enamels, so they look like a painting of a still life with lemons. Still life with poppies. These were really fun to make, and they weren't supposed to be sort of precise botanical replicas, but just give that idea of a bunch of poppies and how they fall and lose their petals over the days. I'm still continuing to work in this still life sort of genre, especially when invited to still life shows. But my practice has sort of got a few different facets. So at the same time as doing these very recognisable sort of soup can shapes and paint cans, I've been trying to sort of pare back the vessels a little bit, making them a little bit more abstracted while still referencing that the paint can or dinted tin or something like that. So these are more about abstract painting and building up interesting layers of paint and rust on these ones. So the rusting I'll show you in a minute is where I angle grind metal filings onto the surface of the glass, which I saw some American artists doing a few years ago, and reached out to Katie Hancock, who's local to this area as well, who generously shared all of the technical process with me. And I just really love it as a way of sort of getting that element of decay on the surface of the vessels, as well as it's a really interesting way to paint with sort of sparks that I just love. So this is another one. This one's actually going to be in the Pilchuck auction this year, if anybody wanted to see it in person. What I was realizing at the time, though, is these were opaque and they were getting quite ceramic looking, which I don't mind, but it sort of made me question what it is that I love about glass and it wasn't quite getting it with these pieces. So I started bringing a little bit more transparency back in while still playing with the painted surfaces. Just got a little video that I'll talk over the top of, which shows the process I was just talking about for these pieces. So many of you have seen glass blowing before, but this is just where it always starts for me. That's the inside of the Canberra Glassworks, so you can see that it's open to the public, and we don't have a hot shop team like the Museum of Glass has here, but we have lots of independent artists who hire the facility, or the Canberra Glassworks hires us as a team to create a commission, or it's a really nice way of working, and there's lots of skilled artists like Rob there who are assisting me, but also developing their own work for shows at the same time. So this first little bit just shows the process of the glass blowing, which you would have seen a little bit of here today. I really like working with the fluidity of the material, which is also another reason I often put dints and things in some of these forms, because it really sort of shows that the glass was malleable at one point, and that's one of my favourite things about working with it. This video was put together by my very talented husband, who is my photographer as well. It was to coincide with my exhibition I just had in Australia, just to show the process of the work that was involved. So once they're finished in the hot shop, they get taken into the cold shop, where I grind a lot of the surface back to reveal that inside transparent colour. And you can see here working up the enamel paints to paint them onto the surface. So once all the grinding is done to get the texture and the form right, then I start building up layers of this enamel paint, which I mentioned earlier is ground up glass mixed with some different things that you can paint onto the surface and then fire in the kiln to get it to adhere. And I'll quite often do 3 to 4 to 5 layers of paint just to really build up that surface. And this was the final step I was talking about, which is a bit strange after spending 30 hours or so working on a piece to just sit it in the metal shop and grind next to it. But the metal sparks stick to the surface, and then they oxidize over time, but I can speed it up a little bit too with vinegar and things. So this is what the resulting pieces came out as. The piece on the left is the one I was cold working, grinding the bottom of in the video. But the show was called Weathered, and it was all about these sort of ambiguous forms that reference domestic forms, but not quite, and the surfaces on top of them, like they'd been left out in the rain for a while. I still like the element of the still life where the objects are sort of connected to each other, but there was also these standalone pieces in that show. So I was looking really closely at some of the surfaces I was getting on the glass, and that sort of inspired me to explore making some wall pieces as well for this show. So the wall pieces I made were actually made in the hot shop as a cylinder with multiple colours, and you cut the bottom off the cylinder, cut the cylinder down the side and open it out into a sheet, which is how they still sometimes make windows. And then I can cold work and paint it more as a panel form rather than a vessel. This is something that I'm excited to continue doing when I get back to Australia. So these are some of the sort of textures and things that inspire me, the build-up of paint and scratching through paint. And I thought this is a good time to introduce what I've been doing this week. So I wanted to bring a little bit more texture in underneath the painted surfaces. So I've been exploring the use of glass powders to sort of build up that crustiness in order to paint over that, as well as introducing some new forms. So those pieces will all get heavily cold worked and painted as well. But I'm really excited about the direction that's all going. If you've been watching today, the last day of my residency has been put aside to work with my friend April Sergeant, who I studied with at the Canberra School of Art. She's a local to this area, but works in a very different way to me. She works with fused together sheet glass that she then carves these really amazing images out of the surface. It's called cameo engraving, and she's very highly regarded for the process. We've always talked about collaborating together, but with the distance and the expense of sending work back and forth, it's always sort of been a little bit tricky. So this was a really good opportunity to sort of start that off and do some testing and see where it goes. So this is some of her work. She's mostly working on flat wall panels, so it's going to be exciting to see what she does with blown vessels as well. Just finally, I just wanted to mention the project that I worked on last year. This was a commission I did for the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. They had a new entry made for the last 5 years or so. They've been working on it, and there's 2 spiral staircases, massive spiral staircases, and they approached the Canberra Glassworks to see if there was something that a local glass artist could do for that space. And the Glassworks very kindly thought of me, and I had a very short turnaround to try to respond to the design brief. And with about 5 days before the initial meeting, they said, actually, you can just come up with a whole other idea as well if you want. So I whipped up a new idea with the concept of the rising sun and the setting sun to line up with the eastern and western stairwells. So this sort of happened all in August last year, and it was installed in January, so a very short time frame. This is the sunset, but there's about 2,000 falling eucalyptus leaves in each stairwell, which I made with the team at the Canberra Glassworks. And the colours fade from gold up to purple in this one and deep blue in the other. But a pretty major project, and it was nice to be able to tie it back to my own work by coming up with that second concept. Thank you again for coming today. Thank you, Katie.
Does anybody have any questions?
So, no challenges. So, like I said, my goal was sort of picking up where my show left off, and the next work that I wanted to make. So, bringing more texture in was the main challenge, and I sort of had a few ideas of how I might approach that, but I really wanted to draw from the team's experience, which is different to my experiences. They work with so many different artists week in, week out. So we tried a few things on Wednesday, which was the first day, and at lunchtime I was really not sure how the week was going to go. It's like, this is awful. Not the team, they're not awful. There's some experiments I made on that first morning underneath the trolley that weren't where I wanted to go. But by the end of the afternoon, we were starting to get somewhere with the powder build-up, and then that gave me the sort of confidence to move forward with some new forms as well, and I'm excited to get them home to start painting on them.